One.
Good morning, everybody. It's a real honor for me to kick off this celebration, this appreciation of what the SBDCs do for our communities. Of course, this is a time where there's a lot of uncertainty that is pretty evident. And I want to recognize and appreciate what the SBDCs do to really bolster the foundation of our economy. Because really our small businesses are the foundation of our economy. So not only do the SBDCs give our small business owners the tools that they need to be successful, but they also give those owners, business owners, confidence. Okay, and that confidence translates into optimism, and that optimism can impact and energize the local and regional economies. And of course, we all know how important confidence is and optimism is in terms of our economic outcomes. So there's that element, and I know that Ernie will be talking a little bit more about that optimism piece later on. I also want to recognize the SBDCs and give my appreciation to them for their increased emphasis on serving our minority business owners. They've really taken up the baton here. And again, we all know the importance of that. When we support our minority business owners, we are also supporting their communities and energizing those communities, making them more economically vibrant. So thank you all for being here. I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of our panelists today about the exciting things that are going on in the PASBDC system. So thanks again. And I would like to introduce next the Provost of Kutztown University, Dr. Lauren Baisden-Arnold.
Thank you, Dr. Carroll. So as a provost, my primary attention is on academics and on the education of our students. And I think that it's important to note the value of entrepreneurship and an entrepreneurial focus for students. Young adults today are kind of by nature entrepreneurial. If you spend any time around young adults, you see how they come up with their own businesses and they start, publicizing them on Instagram and not Facebook, because that's for old people, and Twitter. And, they really do have an entrepreneurial spirit. And when we teach them more formally about entrepreneurship, we give them the structure around that spirit so that then they can go forward and learn how to be self-directed in a way that brings success. This is particularly important for students who might be in majors where they don't have a really clear career path. So, maybe we think about our business majors as being entrepreneurial, and of course they are, but so are fine arts majors, because there's not, a fine arts business that they're necessarily going to go to and get a job when they graduate. They have to learn how to be entrepreneurs to develop themselves as a business. And so I think that this ability to be entrepreneurial and to know how to do it well is something crucial that we teach our students and that the SBDCs contribute to. That having been said, my real purpose here today is to introduce our keynote speaker. Mr. Russ Starke has his MS from Bloomsburg University in instructional technology, and we won't hold that against him because he also has a BS in telecommunication from Kutztown University. He is the CEO of Think Company, service design and digital experience design and development firm headquartered in Philadelphia. Mr. Starke has worked with corporate and nonprofit clients to develop, engage, and implement digital strategy, information architecture, instructional design, business analysis, and project management, which sounds like kind of all the things. So that's pretty impressive. He also uses his knowledge to serve the greater Philadelphia area through work with nonprofit and community organizations, such as Leadership Philadelphia, the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia, the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, and Broad Street Ministry, as well as the Philadelphia chapter of Social Venture Partners, and of course, the Pennsylvania Small Business Development Centers. So please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Mr. Russ Starke.
Good. Yep. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. This is, I have my papers. I don't usually have my papers, but I have so many good things to say. I don't want to mess it up. So yeah. So all right. So thanks for that introduction. Yeah. Like we said, my name is Russ Starke. I am a Kutztown grad from class of 1996. It's always great to be back here. It's actually a bit of a moment for me because I actually stepped foot on this campus for the first time, like almost 30 years ago to the day. So that's something. So it is always great to be back here, and thanks for having me as always. So I appreciate the invitation, and I also appreciated the invitation a couple of years ago from Ernie Post to join the advisory board for SBDC, and it has been it's been great so far, and it is really great to be here in person again after all this time. So that's been great. So yeah, I was asked to share a little bit about kind of my high-level entrepreneurial journey. So yes, after I graduated here with my BS, I went to Bloomsburg for my MS, and so I am very much a product of the PA higher education system, which is great. And from there, I moved to Philadelphia, where now I have lived more than half my life. So I am now more of a Pennsylvanian than a New Yorker, which is also a big deal for me. But I'm proud of that, and that's pretty cool. So yeah, since being in Philadelphia, I've worked exclusively in the digital space. So as was said, I've been an experienced designer, a digital strategist, a business analyst, an information architect, a digital project manager, all those kinds of things. And many of them I did before they actually had formal names. I kind of got into the digital business when really, what we know today as the public version of the internet anyway, was really in its infancy. So I and a lot of the folks that, I kind of was doing it with back in the day, we really pioneered a lot of what now are classes and in schools and what now are positions that people strive to go and get. So, it was a fun time and a wild time to kind of be on the wave of digital. And now obviously, it's ubiquitous. So yeah, so really also, like we said, as far as what I've done digitally, just to provide some context, like I've always been more on the side of digital kind of like products and platforms and systems, more so than like websites. Sometimes they're delivered on the web, but it's less kind of the marketing and content sites, and it's more interactive, transactional kinds of sites is what I've done through most of my career. So yeah, over the years, kind of playing that role in many different companies, some friends and I started talking about, just at lunch, really, how we might do it differently, if we were in charge, and specifically, it was about how we might treat employees differently, how we might treat clients differently, and then, after a certain period of time, it was like, wait, why can't we do that? What's stopping us from doing that? And I imagine that's a very common feeling for many folks in the SBDC ecosystem, right? That at some point you say, why can't I just do this? So we did. And so in 2007, with the help of our first client up in Horsham, Pennsylvania, who gave us a windowless storage room on site to start our company there. There was originally 3 of us. And now 15 years later, there's almost 150 of us. And that's folks all across the United States and even a handful abroad. So it has been quite a ride. And we're headquartered in Philadelphia, and then again have a lot of kind of remote folks around the country and the world now. Yeah, you gave a high level of Think Company, but I just have to do my quick elevator pitch so you hear it. So Think Company is a digital design and development company. And we also do all the kind of strategy and research work that's imperative for the kinds of digital transformation and service design work that we do for our clients. And our clients tend to be larger global firms. That's kind of where we play typically. Although we do also try to fill that out with doing work for nonprofits and doing work for startups and things like that. So it's a nice mix, right? It's pretty important to stay up to speed on not only what the big folks are doing and how they're trying to compete with people coming up, but also helping those folks as well. So we're pretty nimble in that sense. So that's kind of what we do. So it was in 2016, actually, that we had finally grown to a size that I had to hang up being on project teams and being a designer myself. And I had to make designing the company my full-time job. So I've been doing that since 2016. And it was in 2018, actually, that I took on the title of CEO, and that's what I do now. So that's been my journey since I left here 30 years. Well, not 30 years, 26 years ago, but I started here 30 years ago. And again, you know, I'm sharing that in the great state of Pennsylvania, where that was allowed to happen and where it was nurtured. And that's a great thing. And though we worked very, very hard to make it happen, I don't take any of it for granted, not any of it at all. And so, you know, I've always been glad to share what I've learned and what I've seen and experienced over the course of this very privileged journey that I've had. And so, you know, when I was introduced to Ernie and the SBDC and kind of learned that their mission as well is helping folks who are just starting on this journey, I was really interested in that. And especially when they talked about kind of wanting to fill out the advisory board with folks with different backgrounds and that I fill the space. In terms of the digital piece, I was really happy to do that. So, so again, Eric, thanks for that conversation, and Alicia for brokering that way back, right? So, so anyway, that's how I got here today. And that brings us to today, 2022, as we said, you know, a wild year, has a lot of connotation for it. For me, like I said, because 30 years ago I started here, but also just that number in general, I think we'll all be always looking back on these times and what it meant, right? It's funny because our COO regularly tells me when I talk to the company, can you stop referencing the pandemic all the time when you're talking about like the future and what's next? Can you stop? Because I'm really tired of hearing about it. And I get it. I totally get that. I feel that acutely. The amount of times, especially recently, that I have gone to the same meeting that's usually titled like the future of the workplace. And it's with all these different groups and we sit around and we talk and nothing ever really gets decided. It's just a lot of commiserating and venting. And then we go and have the same conversation next week, right? So I feel that acutely, but that is precisely why I mention it now, because at least at a strategic high level or kind of considering the state and nature of entrepreneurship right now, there is simply no way to avoid mentioning the monumental reckoning that is happening as a result of the pandemic and everything that flowed from it. There is no way not to. So that's why I keep referencing it. And I feel like it must be continually repeated because the rules are not going to be the same. It's just that simple. It is not going to be how it was prior. And we're still figuring out in what ways that is true. But on the optimistic side, I also believe that that is largely a good thing. I think that there were some deep ruts that we were all in, and this shook up a lot. What I know for sure is there were many companies we were working for where, let's just say, for example, folks wanted to work from home more often. No, you cannot do that. We can't do what we do from home, period, full stop. Well, everybody got a crash course in that, didn't they? And you either figured it out or you didn't. And things that people said were going to take years, well, it took a few weeks or a few months, or you capsized. So people figured it out. Some of this is good. Some of this is good, okay? But before I continue, let me just say this. I want to keep this light and upbeat and hopefully inspirational on some level. But I want to acknowledge that a lot of the opportunity that we see before us is rising from the ashes of things that went up in flames. That is true, right? And many businesses, particularly those in service and retail, they took on heavy damage or went away completely. I saw this happen to friends of mine. I saw this happen to favorite establishments, and you did too. I know you did, right? So, you know, I'm all for being optimistic and looking forward because That's the only direction that we can make any difference. It's the only place we can make any change. But I do want to acknowledge and honor all of the great many folks who were and still are affected by everything that's been going on in the last 2 years. And that's their jobs, their livelihoods, their savings, their families, their health, right? We need to say that before we talk about and be optimistic about the future. We need to acknowledge that, okay? But the good news is that through entrepreneurship, there is real hope and opportunity to get these people back and make them whole again. And that's exciting. That's good stuff, okay? So, and by the way, that's clearly what we've been seeing in Pennsylvania in particular, and that's what we want to focus on today, right? Especially with those engaging with SBDC, the way I would sum it up is that there is an unrelenting drive to build, create, pivot, and innovate. That's what we're seeing, right? It's an evidence all around us, and it is exciting, and it's cause for optimism, absolutely. And there is a lot of activity going on out there right now. And I know that I am preaching to the choir here, but I'm going to anyway, and I'm going to read them because, in fact, for SBDC clients exclusively, a new business is opened every 6.5 hours. There's $100,000 in sales made every hour and a half. And there's a new job created every hour and 18 minutes. That is just SBDC clients. That's pretty fantastic, right? That's the reality of what's happening out there right now. So the numbers themselves, just those stats, are impressive, even on their own. But where it gets really exciting is when we go beyond the numbers and we talk about the other trends that we're seeing out there. So what I've certainly been seeing is the overwhelming spirit of purpose that we're seeing in entrepreneurship right now. That's driving those numbers. So it's passion projects that folks are pouring their hearts and minds into and souls into, often building on family legacies, right? So like Joy Goda exporting out in Pittsburgh, or La Abuela restaurant in West Reading. Passions turned into revenue generators like Gardens All Year Long, which is hydroponics in New Kensington, or Pampered Paws in Northumberland. Businesses that are filling needs in the marketplace that are in many cases a lot different than those looked a couple of years ago, right? So stepping up and catering to the desire for more sustainable materials, like Thinking Green Systems in Shippensburg, new kinds of pressures on families and communities, like energy rehab and wellness and State College and their unique home-based model. Restaurants and food providers adapting to new customer preferences like Soupy Brothers in Mount Carmel or Mixed Salad Concept in Pittsburgh. And that's just naming just a few of the SBDC roster, just a few. There's many, many more. And that kind of passion is precisely the answer to one of the most pressing challenges, maybe the most pressing, that businesses are facing right now. And Ernie and I were talking about it before we got started. And that is the incredibly competitive marketplace for talent. Use all the expletives and all the superlatives, like unprecedented and all of that. That's all happening right now. It's unbelievable in a way that maybe we've never seen. And that is true because especially for small businesses, but even for medium-sized ones like the one that I help run, we cannot compete with the big organizations and the kind of money that they are willing to throw at solving their recruitment challenges. They have just gotten to the point where they don't even care anymore. They will throw so much money at it to just check the box and put someone there. We can't possibly compete, at least not on the surface when it comes just to a salary number. So how do we compete? And that's where that passion comes in. What we're hearing consistently is now, maybe more than ever before, people are looking at all of the components of compensation when they're making their decisions. So yes, of course, there's the table stakes, salary, benefits, bonus potential, right? And people, they're going to leave for that. They're going to make decisions based on that. But there's also heavy weighting and serious consideration being given to culture, to work-life balance, to on-site requirements versus the ability to work remotely, up to and including how organizations are showing up in their communities, how they're giving back, and their commitments to inclusivity and transparency. This is all actually part of the package and where people want to go and work. And if it's on the table, it might even be small pieces of ownership, right? Even that can make a big difference. And it's easier to do that sometimes in smaller businesses. That can be critical drivers and people feeling invested, in the success and the future of the organization, and also sticking around to benefit from making it a reality, right? And a lot of those things, the big companies can't do. They actually can't do that kind of stuff. It's way harder. So that's where we can start to compete. So the best thing you can do in this environment is to communicate upfront your complete compensation package and cultural values and expectations, providing as much detail as you can, because yes, people will move to a new organization for higher table stakes. They will. But if that's all that they're getting and it's all that they're seeing, if they're worth their salt, they won't stay very long before someone else is going to offer them a higher package, and then they're going to jump again. Sometimes they're not even looking for it. They're getting poached. That's happening regularly as well. And actually, because of this, the days of resumes with lots of one-year stints or less being real red flags, I think those days are over. In fact, we're regularly seeing that nobody seems to care. Those folks are getting hired, they're getting poached. So that's not a thing anymore. It's kind of the Wild West, and we're rethinking what it looks like, right? So that old school kind of hesitation to jump, it's not a thing anymore. So that's changed the game. What matters more now is that people regularly both say and demonstrate that they will stay with companies longer term when they are aligned with the purpose, right? Maybe even the mission, if you go so far as to categorize it that way. Employees are asking themselves, do I really understand where this company is going and what it's going to look like in 1, 3, 5 years if we are really doing right by the employees, by the customers, by the clients, by the community? Do I really know what that looks like? So taking time to envision and then articulate what the vision is for the company, that can make a huge difference. And it can be a huge differentiator, and we're seeing that. So just leaving you with that little piece. And so again, in my opinion, that passion and that purpose and hunger is where the kinds of organizations that are being empowered by SBDC, that's their superpower. So if I were speaking to them, I would say kind of 4 high-level things. And I know this is a flyby and this is a lot of information, but 4 high-level things I would say. One is, you tend to be of a size and a tenure, and more importantly, that fresh intensity and excitement, where the ruts, if there are any, are not that deep yet. So you can still steer out of them. You can make changes right now that larger companies can't compete with, because the old adage of a big ship being a lot harder to turn around than the little speedboat, it's true. So seeing the ruts, seeing the opportunity, knowing what matters to people and making radical changes, now you have that ability. That's a superpower. Number 2 would be, you can educate your entire staff now on how the business really works, and have more folks not only understanding the constraints and why things are the way they are, but also helping to make the business better and more efficient in all of the little ways that over time really roll up and make a big difference. And even better, those folks then, when they start taking on leadership positions as your business grows, they already know how the sausage is made. That's great. That's a real asset. Number 3, and this is a big one. Actually, these are all big ones. 3 in the list of big ones. You can aim for as much transparency as possible, which my friend Ian Fitzpatrick from Archetype Solutions Group, I love. He calls transparency the great antiseptic for businesses, and I love that. That has really stuck with me. And you can be more transparent right now, because again, that's another thing that becomes way more difficult as you grow. And in fact, in my opinion and experience, the more that you can make transparent upfront, even to the point of maybe being a little uncomfortable while you're doing that. We just recently did something very uncomfortable. I did not come up in an environment where I knew what everybody made in the whole company and where that was easy for everybody to see. We shared that. That was like a big deal. That was a little uncomfortable. Be transparent to the point of being uncomfortable. It actually makes your job a lot easier, because the explanations are out there for everyone to see, right? And it gets more people on board. So, my metaphor here is that whenever you leave blanks in your narrative, whenever there's information you're not providing and you leave blanks, people will fill those blanks. That's what humans do. We have evolved to complete narratives and to find patterns. That's what humans do. So if you leave blanks, nobody's going to go, well, I guess they just didn't tell us that. They are going to fill those blanks with their assumptions. And most times those assumptions will be wrong. And you might not even know this is happening, but you'll feel it because it's like swimming against the tide. And it happens every day. So the more that you can put out there, actually the easier it makes your job. But the easier it is to hang on to folks who really understand how a company works, right? And number 4, you can look for opportunities now to benefit from diversity in your staff at all levels and particularly in leadership positions. If you don't, this will become exponentially harder as you get larger and people get entrenched. Looking more like the communities that we serve in all of the many ways that they are diverse is not just a good look and a good vibe. It is not just that. It is better for business. Proven fact that when people from diverse backgrounds work together to serve challenges, those solutions are better and companies make more money. Fact, proven. Do it now. So I know that we have limited time, and I know that was a lot, and I know we want to have Q&A if anybody has any questions. So I'll bring this in for a landing. And again, like I said, I know that's a lot, and that's tip of the iceberg, but that's some of the things we talked about. Maybe I would talk about today and hit at a high level. But I mean it sincerely that if there's anything here that you want to talk about more with me, or for whatever reason, I hope that you'll find me on LinkedIn. Again, it's Russ Starke at Think Company, and that you reach out and that we'll take it from there. So I'll pause and we can have some question and answer if you'd like. But again, thanks for having me here today.
Question, and I know some of our grad students will probably have some too. But 2 of the top service requested needs of our clients this year revolve around help. They'd like us to help them find new customers and help develop new sales strategies. Just wondering if you could touch on that in this new environment we're in. What you have found helpful, instrumental in getting back to the old networking, or
Yeah.
things our small businesses should be thinking about.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess, so much of that, obviously, it always depends. That's the consultant answer, and I am a consultant, so it does depend. But I think what we know for sure is, I've always been a proponent of getting out and shaking hands and getting to meet people, but that's the long game. I call that the long game. It can sometimes result in, quick deals and things like that, but I think that's more community building and network building, and that pays off long term. I think when you talk about smaller businesses thinking about these kinds of things, I am not an apologist for the internet, but it's out there and digital is everywhere, and everybody's on those channels. And if you're not really being serious about a digital strategy for how to get your message out there, that's a big miss, because pretty much anybody who's looking for a service or a product, that's where they're looking. They're searching on the internet. That's what they do. So you can pretend otherwise, or you can, kind of have a small, community where you're posting things on bulletin boards, but then it's going to stay small. And if your challenge is how do I find more customers? Well, that's the answer. And it is more than just what I call digital tumbleweeds, which is standing something up and being like, there's my website, I'm done. Like, that's not how it works. That's a tumbleweed, because nobody's going to go there. In fact, the old adage, and people still say this sometimes, I'm like, you are wrong. And people are like, well, if we build it, they will come. Like, actually, they won't, because the internet is enormous, and people don't, if they ever just surfing around for the heck of it, that's not a thing anymore. People are very purpose driven. They have goals that they want to achieve and then move on. So you need to optimize your messaging, make sure it's where these people actually are. And I would say that the best way to do that is actually and because we don't do this actually, it would be to engage someone who really knows how to do that really understands the algorithms, understands what you're trying to accomplish, what the goals of your business are, what kind of content you can put out there, and what success looks like. It's worth trying to engage a consultant on that, because we actually do that as well. It's not something that you would think that the folks at Think Company who all grew up in digital, that we would be like, yeah, we got this. We don't. It is more complicated than that. There are people who are experts in this, and it doesn't have to be a huge spend or huge of time or money to work with somebody who understands those mechanisms and can get your message out there.
Russell.
Oh, yeah.
I'll ask a question.
Sure.
So, I work for the federal government. I work for SBA. And one of the things we always talk about is how do we get companies to scale up? And how do we get companies to scale up that may have challenges with access to capital, which is another space that we're in. But what would be your advice for small businesses that are trying to grow, but may have limitations, right, on what they can spend? And I would assume maybe a digital strategy is one of those suggestions you might have. But any other advice you might have for companies that need to scale up? Because supposedly we're clear that that's going to insulate them against potential failure and challenges down the road.
Yeah. Well, okay. As I often do, like my response to this is not going to be necessarily a laundry list of like do these things, but I'll tell you what I have found is even more necessary, right? The nuts and bolts of like, hey, digital strategy, let's do this. Like picking the things that we would do, super important. But what I've found is that most people haven't done the step before that, which is really articulating for themselves, for their leadership team, for whatever size it is, even if leadership team is one person or two, and the employees, really articulating who you are as a company, because the things that you're talking about, that requires expense, it requires risk, right? Like you're going to be doing things that are going to test you and move you into places that are uncomfortable. If you're not sure who you are as an organization and what's most important to you, what are your core values, what are your metrics, what are you trying to do, and painting that picture first. And I'm speaking from experience. If you haven't done that first, it's so hard to decide where you're going to play your chips, because you've got a limited amount of them. So where am I going to put them on the board? If we haven't articulated, well, this is who we are, and this is what matters to us most, and therefore we are willing to sacrifice a little revenue in order to keep it a great place to work for now, so that this happens, right? Or whatever it is, or no, we're not willing to ever sacrifice whatever it is, salary, or when that all that stuff has to say, no. People are going to work 40 hours a week, period. Otherwise, they're going to leave. That's what we're doing. Okay, well, then we can't do this, and this, right? So for me, I just think a lot of folks have not gone through the effort of really describing for themselves, this is who we are as an organization, and therefore this is where we're okay taking risk. And then I think the kinds of things that you decide to invest in come out of that. Because digital strategy, like I said, it doesn't have to be a ton of money and time, but it's money and time, and it's a lot. It's a big, it's a line item, and like we said, you only have so many chips. So if you're going to play them there, is that aligned with who you are and who you said you want to be, and can everybody see why? Right? Because we've probably all been places before where, depending on what is the loudest barking dog, you feed that a little bit, and it's a little money here and a little money here and a little money here, and that's not a great strategy. So for me, it's always like, take a step back, do a little visioning, do a little self-narrative, and then what comes next comes out of it. Because that's one of our I'm sorry, I keep talking, but that's one of our methodologies, is like, if you paint the picture of a vision first, and then people can say, well, that vision looks great, I would love for our company to look like that. Then you can go, all right, great. Because in order for that to be a realistic future, we're going to have to do, and you can list all of the projects that would make that future a reality. And then you can start to prioritize them and put them on a roadmap and decide where's the most bang for the buck and which ones enable the next ones and where's the critical path. I mean, that's how you work through that. You know all this. That was like, just set me up. But thanks for the question.
I don't really have a great way of like allocating what I want to say, but I know we have some students in the room, and obviously they have their work with SBDC, or maybe they're just a guest today. But do you have any recommendations for them in their own personal journeys, whether it be other entities of the university or their next step in their career once graduation, to start to engage an audience? I know some of our students, maybe they work in some departments on campus, and pivoting from the COVID challenges now to we're having this in-person environment, but we're not we've kind of crashed the buildup we had prior, and now it's like we're in this rebuilding phase of getting people to want to engage, come be present physically with us at events, come buy into the purpose. Do you have any recommendations from, I mean, obviously it's a little bit different than your mission with businesses, but still those personal endeavors on a college campus?
Yeah, well, I mean, Yeah, there's a lot in there. I'm like trying to figure out what's the
Yeah.
best way for me to answer it. But I guess the thing that I would say to even a general question in that sense, and certainly for students, is kind of my answer to when people say, like, what do you wish you knew when you started? And the thing that I'm actually not sure that if I had told myself it, or if somebody else had told me it, that I actually would have listened, because I was actually very uncomfortable actually even doing this kind of thing. And my dad was always like, you have to meet more people, like go out there, just go talk to that person. I'm not doing that. I don't like that. Like I actually still don't. You know, I know what my job is, so like this is part of my job, and therefore I do it. But I'm actually not wired that way. But I learned professionally that is the most important thing you can do, the absolute most important thing. And I don't think there has to be like a formula for it, because I think you can optimize it based on what makes the most sense for you. Some people can work a room and some people just can't for whatever reason. That's fine. But what matters is, are you over time making connections with new people, getting to know them, and more importantly, for a student, are they getting to know you? Because when you make an impression on somebody and they know who you are and they know what you're capable of, every person that you kind of light up, that's another person that, especially if you keep that bulb lit. I actually, that is my metaphor for these. It's kind of like flickering bulbs on like on a string of lights, right? Whenever a bulb is flickering, whether it's an employee or whether it's a contact you haven't talked to in a long time, you go and twist that back in, talk to that person and get that light so it's not flickering. Making a network of a lot of people and being deliberate about it. And I'm talking about legit interactions, not finding somebody that you admire and like connecting with them on LinkedIn with no message. And then I'm connected to that person. And, you know, because I've actually started combing back through my LinkedIn and deleting anybody that if somebody says to me like, hey, do you know Alicia? Well, yes, I do know her. We have a relationship. I can make that relationship. But then do you know so-and-so? I'm like, I think I don't know. I met somebody at a lunch. I don't even know who that is. No, if I can't reliably say, hey, Alex, remember last time I saw you? Delete it, gone. And so I think people are doing more of that and they're curating their networks. And so, sorry, I'm all over the place, but I think the best thing you can do is cultivate a network in the way that is most comfortable to you. And that's important. That's okay. You don't have to be shaking hands and kissing babies if you're better on Zoom. That's fine. But create a network of people who know you and do it early. Because I didn't really start doing that legitimately till like maybe only 10 years ago. I was lucky that I was good at what I did, and that's how I moved up through the ranks. But I was lucky. That is the key word. Because if any of those companies had gone out of business or I moved or something and I didn't have that network, I would have been starting all over again. The network is the most important thing. And believe me, like when I used to go to things and people would say like, it's networking time. I was like, oh no. Like, I'm not looking forward to networking time. That's not who I am, but you can make it meaningful. And that's another thing I'll just say about networking time is that it's not shaking your hand while I'm looking around the room to see who's next, right? It's legitimate connections with people because you want the people to remember you and think of you. And it is the most important thing you can do professionally. Does that even come close?
No, I think that's really perfect. Some of those things are resonating with, I think, especially the students, like as they're going off into their careers and even just leaving their impact here, they're like working with people. And if you make that impact, people are more likely to buy into what you're doing. So
yeah,
say you work at the Women's Center and you want people to engage in your programs, they don't maybe not have a personal interest and they're like, well, that's nice, but they don't have a person they connect with. So maybe that student is their connection. It's like, oh, we had this awesome conversation and yeah, I want to help out. I want to elevate that message. So I think that's really awesome advice to everyone here and our students specifically.
cool. Yeah, I mean, and like, look, you know, life is a mixture, as we know, of like things that happen right like that, whether you expect it or not, or things that take a long time. And I always tell people, like, if as you're meeting people, because we all want stuff to happen right away, especially in our career. I want the best job now, but it's not always going to happen like that. And if you are having good conversations with people and building a network, you actually are taking steps on the path, even if it feels like it's happening slowly. Because at some point, boom, that job is going to show up. Like, oh, you know what? Remember we talked 2 weeks ago? I just talked to somebody who's looking for you. That happens, but only if we've talked first, you know? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, kind of going on with Rachel's question, how much of that do you think is luck? Like you said, you need someone who has that opening or opportunity for you. But then there are, you know, take the initiative, go to these events and stuff. But how much of that do you really think is luck, like finding the right person that has an opportunity for you?
That's an excellent question because, and it gets real existential real quick. Because there's a lot I could say about that. Because let's just go there. As a middle-aged white guy, I can say things were luck, but doors opened for me, invisible doors that I didn't even see happen, but it happened. I know it happened. And that doesn't mean I didn't work hard. It doesn't mean any of that, but it does mean that, you know, whatever other characteristics I had didn't stop me the way that they stop other people. Let's just say that. So luck comes into play there. But having said that, yeah, I mean, I think there's something about being in the right place at the right time. Had I been in the right place at the right time here 30 years ago, I'd be a rock star right now. But nobody was there with a contract for me to sign to be a rock star. So I ended up doing this, right? But that is how it goes, right? And I say it gets existential because you can look backwards. I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. You can look backwards in your path, and depending on whatever your belief system is, you can see the hand of providence there guiding you. You can look backwards and see why that all made sense, but it's really hard to look into the future and see what makes sense next. It's really hard. So yeah, I think if we're realistic, a lot of things happen because you were in the right place at the right time. But that begs the question, well, then where are you? Because look, pandemic aside, prior to the pandemic, where are you? Because I was lucky to be in organizations that helped propel me forward, but I wasn't out meeting people on a regular basis, and I should have been. I wasn't, right? You can't be in the right place at the right time if you're just home watching Netflix. So yeah, there's luck, but you have to, you got to give it a little gas, you know?
But if I could just add, I mean, so the other thing is 10,000 hours, right? You put 10,000 hours into something. And my father used to always tell me, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Love that.
That has stuck with me.
Yeah, totally.
So work real hard, put 10,000 hours in.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because look, that's a good point too. I'm very proud of my degrees from here and all of that. I am, but degrees don't mean now what they did mean. People ask me all the time, like, hey, if I get this certification from such and such organization, will I be more attractive to your company? And my answer is no. All I care about is your portfolio. That's really it. And I don't care if you never went to school. I care about your portfolio. And I'm not saying that we all don't benefit as human beings and everything else by going through programs at higher education. I am the biggest proponent of that. But what I'm saying is being awesome at whatever you choose to be awesome at, do that too. Actually, maybe do that first, right? Because that matters more. The piece of paper, the ticket, whatever you want to call it, that is not an automatic in. It might get you a conversation, maybe, but the demonstrated ability is what will get you the job. And even if you get the job without the demonstrated ability, you're not keeping it, not unless you can do it.
I think that's perfect, really, because I know in roles I've had currently and even previously, I know Zach, I'm always like, apply for this job, go on, like, let's hustle. But like, you want to have those experiences to show for, like the degree that obviously shows you're inclined to work towards something, but what do you do with that knowledge, that information? How do you connect and collaborate? So I think that's really awesome for anyone as we kind of continue on and master our craft.
Well, and that's the way to get around. I used to call it, I lived this acutely, where like I wanted to change my career or at least change, a little bit of like the road I was on and everything I wanted to do. I'm like, I would be awesome at this job. I know I would. But there's these magic bullet points on what they're asking for. And those magic bullet points are not on my resume. And so somebody was just going, nope. Like that's the way it goes. I say, if that's the employer, that's not where you want to work in the first place. That is some seriously myopic thinking, but it does happen. But the way around that is, hey, you're looking for 10 years experience. I get it. But it looks like what you want somebody to be able to do is this, and you show them that you can do it. That's the way around that. And I will say, I'm seeing more of, especially now, because the talent crunch is real. People are like, maybe the way we've been doing this forever is not great. Maybe there's a better way. And I'm seeing more people willing to take some risks.
transition from being involved with projects to CEO, did you have any reservations making that move?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. Yeah, am I like killing the time here too? Okay. Here's the honest truth, right? You know, the whole thing of imposter syndrome. Nobody has more imposter syndrome than me. Every day I'm waiting for someone to tap me on the shoulder and be like, you're not supposed to have this job. I'd be like, I know. And then I would leave. Yeah, I can't believe I've been doing it. Sorry, here's my jacket, right? Like I do feel that way. So going from being a practitioner where like, look, frankly, it was easy to just dig in and like, I'm the best at this. It was very clear what the job was, and going to something that is way more ambiguous, way more emotional on a daily basis. Like, yeah, it was a move, right? And I'm not sure, I don't know. Like maybe there are people who are wired for that and it's just obvious and they do it with no reservation. I've been lucky enough to meet, you know, a good amount of other people doing similar roles to me that they are regular people that are like, yeah, man, I'm just trying to figure it out every day. And there's what they project and then there's who they actually are, you know? Like when I get done here, I'm going to take this off and I'm going to go check out Young Ones and buy some CDs. Like, you know what I mean? Like I just happen to have this goofy title, but that is also my superpower, right? Is understanding like, look, you know, we're all just playing roles and this just happens to be my role. And it has this title that people put a lot of weight on, sometimes like unfair weight where I'm like being prejudged about how I'm going to show up and who I am and all that other kind of stuff. But we're all just playing roles, right? And so yes, like I had a lot of trepidation, but I guess I'm sharing all I'm sharing because my main advice to anybody in any scenario, I talk to our head of HR about this all the time. It's like, listen, if you show up from a place of empathy and authenticity, you can always walk that back. If you show up from that place, you can always say, oh my gosh, I didn't see that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. All right, let's fix it. But if you show up from a place of like, you know, dead on authority, I'm the best, you're all idiots. Like, and there are people who that's the way they show up. That's a different thing. That's probably not what you asked. The overall is, yeah, was I hesitant? Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever miss being kind of hands-on with projects, or
Yep.
how do you kind of balance your role and then, because I'm a very hands-on person.
Yeah.
But as a creative, like I want to create, so like
Yeah.
how do you balance that out?
It goes back to what I said before. It actually was a literal process of me like reminding myself of what my narrative is. I can't just show up and do a job unless I'm like, wait, what is this in service of and what am I doing? So I shared my narrative in the story that I shared, where it's like, my narrative is this. I've always been a designer and I was a good designer. I was a great consultant and I was a great like people person, right? But then getting to the point where I'm like, look, I'm actually doing the same things. I'm trying to create great experiences for people, for everybody in the ecosystem. I'm trying to do it based on data. I'm trying to do the research. You know, yes, you know, we're trying to have great business results. These are all just constraints and these are metrics. It's the same thing I was doing for projects. It's just that now the company is my project. And I needed to create that narrative for myself to be like, I'm still the same person. It's just that I'm not now doing it for client A. I'm doing it for Think Company. That's my job now. I just say that because I'm a big proponent of narratives. I like people ask things like, well, what is your why? And I think that's a good question. It's like, just reminding yourself, like, why am I doing this? So like I was talking about before, look, if your why is money only, you're going to leave and you're going to go to some company that's probably going to grind you to a stump, but they're going to really pay you. And maybe right now where you are in life, that's what you want. So that's fine. But it helps to know that. Right? To not go in that and then find out you're getting killed. I thought I was going to make all this money and basically be working less. No, that's not going to happen. Right. But if your narrative is, but I don't care because money matters the most, you're good. Right. I think it's for the job you're doing. I think it's for the company you're working. I think it's for the life you live. Is like, what am I trying to do? What's my vision for myself? And what is my narrative? Who am I in this story? And that's what's helped me get through it, because I have had to do that. I've had to reset myself, especially during really difficult times. Like, why am I doing this? I mean, and I mean that in the best of ways. I'm so grateful for this job and for my role, and I'm so grateful. But it doesn't mean that at times I'm like, wait, why am I doing this again? And what does success look like? Oh, right. Oh, okay. All right. Got it. You know, like, and for me, you know, you didn't ask, but I'll just say, like, for me, it is a piece of running a company in a way that I believe other companies can point to and be like, oh, you actually can run a company that way. Where I'm like, a company can be run where people are respected and people treat each other a certain way and you treat clients a certain way. And there's a certain, there's a certain work-life balance and a certain culture that can be done in a way that is also financially responsible and the business can succeed. And to me, that's actually my biggest and most important challenge. So that whenever anybody says no, and they're circling the wagons, well, we can't do that stuff anymore because it's money or this or whatever. I'm like, sorry, I'm going to keep doing it this way. And I'm showing you it's possible. That is the most important thing for me. Okay, yeah, that's a lot. All right, more than you asked for. I was super blurry up there, huh?
That's a hard act to follow. Thank you very much, Russ. That was great. Dr. Arnold, Dr. Carroll, thank you for the hospitality here at Kutztown and all the support that you give to the centers. I'm Dave Patty. I'm the chairman of the advisory board. And I've been working with the Pennsylvania SBDC program since the 87-88 budget. So 35 years ago, probably this month. I was 10. Most of what I've done with the SBDCs and with the 16 centers is to help explain our role to public policy makers and fight for money. I will say, Russ, I wrote a white paper for Greg Higgins circa 2000 about using content management and content syndication to pull together one web presence for all 16 centers. So for all of you who are involved in the web now, there have been a lot of generations of this. Keep on working. We need to keep going. We started off as pure brochureware and have come a long way since then. Spending time with politicians. I've written the speeches for them. I've given the speeches for them. I've helped them with, the line. The most important part of our economy is small business. Small business creates more jobs than anybody else. It's true. Small business also lays off more people than anybody else. It's burn and churn in small business. And NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, and their economists and people who advocate for them, they know that. There is all kinds of exciting things happening every year, a lot through our center, and there's all kinds of heartbreaking tears for small businesses every year. Yes, that happened during COVID, and we saw it, in a big way, and maybe it was more personal to each of us as our favorite business went out. But you all know that you go down the street and all of a sudden the restaurant that you always loved isn't there anymore. And then next week you see your same favorite server at a different place. So the other good thing about that is that most of the people in that system get recycled. They also learn through that recycling, and so do the entrepreneurs who started them. Now, some of those entrepreneurs age like some of the people who work here, and we need to help them find new skills and help them hone their talents and bring things to the table that they wouldn't have thought of that weren't available. It's technology changes. So I work for a bank now doing their marketing and communications and government affairs and a lot of other things. But there are things that I work on now, pay-per-click campaigns or Google AdWords or whatever, that I couldn't have worked on 10 years ago because they didn't exist yet, 15 years ago or 20 years ago. So when I first did communications, it was about buying radio and television and newspapers. For those of you who aren't sure, newspaper is this thing on, well, never mind. You don't really have to know. It's been fun to watch that and fun to watch what the SBDCs have brought to the table. I was with Pat Brown earlier this week. He's from the Lehigh Valley. He's the appropriations chairman for the Senate, for the Senate Republicans. And Pat's been in the legislature for probably 25 years or so, between the House and the Senate, maybe a little bit more. Pat was talking about how, because of public policy considerations, Pennsylvania is not the most attractive place to bring in employers. So, you Google, Amazon, whoever, everybody's chasing those. Once upon a time, it was car companies, steel mills, and the highest net corporate net income tax in America, with a tort system where the plaintiff's bar runs roughshod over businesses throughout Pennsylvania. You can sue anybody, anywhere, any place, anytime for anything in Pennsylvania. For a lot of regulatory reasons, we're not the place that the big businesses necessarily want to go to. And interestingly, Senator Brown's take was all the more reason we have to help create small businesses. All the more reason we have to foster entrepreneurship because we're not going to get the big ones. So we need lots and lots of 5 jobs here, 10 jobs here, 20 jobs here, 30 jobs there, 40 jobs there. The good thing about that is even if a couple of them go down, even if a sector goes down, like restaurants, not all your eggs are in one basket, so you didn't lose it all. So there's a lot of strength to small business there. But I think there's a part of small business that gets overlooked that we all need to think about in terms of the SBDC program. John and his colleagues at the centers know this. We think about if any of us who are in communications is going to do the establishing shot for a small business, what is it? It's a flower shop or a hardware store or a bakery, right? And they're facing it's retail oriented, they're facing people, right? That's not what most of them are like. In fact, those of you in comms and in web design and everything know that. It's B2B. The real ticket to small business is business to business sales, business to business business. And as now working for a big bank, I spent the 90s lobbying for the chemical industry. So I had mom and pop companies like Roman Hawes, DuPont, Dow, Monsanto, but I did have some small little companies. And I spent most of 15 years before coming to the bank with big businesses like US Steel or PNC Bank or Wells Fargo or the electric companies. But who does anything from cleaning the offices to security, to cybersecurity, to graphics and design, to law, specialty finance? You throw in the business specialty, it's a small business. Because as we tried to lean down in the 80s and the 90s and have the right size for the big companies, what they decided the best way to handle everything was contract out. First of all, it offloads our payroll, our benefits, and our pension liability, and makes us look better on the books, because we can always sort of start a contract, end a contract if we have to make the numbers. So that's the downside of that if you're the small business person providing your services. But more importantly, what big business in America discovered in the 80s and the 90s is they weren't getting it done on innovation anymore. They were the proverbial Queen Mary. They couldn't turn. It took forever. But small nimble businesses that have 40 different clients. So I was with a .com at the turn of the century, and our 35 people were handling websites for everything from Lehigh University and some big companies to small companies and doing those little $99 websites for people. But the fact of the matter is 35 people could do that for companies that would have had 35 just for themselves. So we were leaner, meaner, but by doing it 30 times, we learned from all of those clients, and we took that knowledge and that learning into the big company and said, not just based on what we've done here for you, but based on everything we've done, the totality of our work, here's the consulting that we can bring in. And Russ talked about the consulting knowledge and your ability to walk in and say, I'm giving you more than just my company. I'm giving you the sum of the knowledge that we've collected from lots of companies. And anything that we touch in the SBDCs, all of our clients who do the B2B work are bringing that in, whether it be even how to clean and sanitize because of COVID, let alone some kind of very crazy digital technology. They're bringing their collective wisdom from lots of different workplaces. And that's a critical factor to the American economy. And I think it's something that makes the American economy so much stronger, because we have this diversity of small businesses, because we have the power of small businesses, and because there is the government and public policy support through SBDC, SBA, lots of other places, Ben Franklin, everything that we do in this state to foster the growth. I think we're better off. I think we're stronger. I think we have a more robust economy. I think it's the way we came out of COVID quickly, and could figure things out. We often talk at Customers Bank about, do we build something in-house? Do we buy it from somebody else, software and digital products and everything, or do we rent it? And the answer is all of the above. Because the time it takes us to hire the right people and build an in-house digital thing, we now are doing instant tokens for the crypto industry. Well, we kind of did both. We went out and found somebody, and we're using their technology. We help them customize it, because we usually try to be an early adapter. And if you're an early adapter, you get to kind of call some of the shots. You take some beta risk, but you also take some some of the upside of it's built for you. And don't let them see this videotape. Oh, we might be looking at other people too, right? You know, it could have happened. I don't know. And actually, in that case, there's a limited number of players out there. But they know if they don't innovate and don't stay ahead, don't keep the leader, they will lose us, and they will lose the other banks that they have. You know, right now there's only a handful of us doing the crypto industry kind of work that they're doing. But because they're a small business, they know they have to be out there and be leaders. So I think our job in the SBDCs is to be the leaders for them, to help our people stay at that cutting edge, at that leading edge, to help them be nimble, to help them recognize ways that they can go out. So yes, we can help them go find clients by saying, well, here's what digital advertising is all about. And here's how you can do a better job of positioning yourself at a lower price and everything. And we would need to do that. But we need to be there for the recycling of the companies, the recycling of the personnel, the recycling of the talent, the recycling of the thought process, that we keep taking businesses to the next place, the next level, the next generation, so that the small business stuff we started with in the 80s is still with us in the 2020s and 2030s, even though it doesn't look anything like the same business that we started with. And I want to say thank you to everybody at the 16 centers and everybody in this room who makes that possible. You know, Ernie and the state team are doing a great job of leadership. We've overcome a lot of challenges. We hit some big numbers last year, but no matter how good we are today, we got to be that good and better next year. So the advisory board's role isn't as a fiduciary responsibility or leadership or governance, but to hopefully keep providing good advice and good input, keep applauding the good things, keep making sure that the resources are there, and we're all delighted to do that. So on behalf of everyone on the advisory board, you know, thank you for your work, and we want to keep supporting you. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. I want to next introduce Solomon Wheeler, our program officer from our Small Business Administration, which is our primary funder at the Pennsylvania SBDC program. Solomon, please join us and share a few comments on behalf of SBA.
Okay, thank you. I can see this. Well, good morning to everyone. It's good to finally be back out in the wild. I had an opportunity to talk with Ernie. We've been remote for 24 months. So this is my first face-to-face event in 24 months, if you can believe that. And so, my comments, I'm going to forgive me for reading, but I'm still getting rid of the cobwebs. My name is Solomon Wheeler. I'm the SBA's Harrisburg branch manager. The SBA, for those of you who may not know, is a federal agency that's really focused in three areas: counseling, capital, and contracting. And so we're sprinkling your tax dollars throughout those three areas to help really achieve our mission. And our mission is to help Americans start and grow businesses. So, today is March 16th. We recognize SBDC Day and the contributions of our small business development centers in Pennsylvania and across the nation. Over the last 40 plus years, right, countless small businesses have started or expanded with the help of SBDCs. So SBDC's Day is really a day that unites the nearly 1,000 SBDCs nationwide, recognizing the tremendous impact that they've had on developing successful businesses. SBDCs deliver 1-hour consulting, technical and training assistance. They offer services that include help with business planning, financing assistance, manufacturing, marketing, feasibility studies, the list goes on and on. SBDCs are committed to the success of individual small businesses and their communities, dedicating resources toward key focus areas like rural development and underserved populations, which we did mention. So throughout the pandemic, we've learned, right, SBDCs have become critical in helping small business owners fill out all of the loan documentations and loan applications, offering business owners advice about the reopening process and more. So today we highlight SBDC services and celebrate the success small business owners have achieved and the hurdles they've overcome with guidance from their local SBDCs. So on behalf of the SBDCs and and the SBA and all of our economic stakeholders. I want to certainly thank you for all of your hard work and dedication, and happy SBDC Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Solomon. And I'll rely on Chris here to pull up the presentation. I'm just going to take a few minutes and hit a few of the slides, but I'm Ernie Post, State Director with Pennsylvania SBDC program. Want to recognize our live audience here at McFarland Center at Kutztown University, but also I want to recognize our online viewers, many of whom are from our network, our clients throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and some of our friends and stakeholders. So in terms of some key achievements we achieved this past year, first, we achieved our first full accreditation as the new lead office for the Pennsylvania SBDC program. So we were very excited about that. In terms of outcomes and output, I'll just hit a few of the highlights. We're celebrating, as Solomon said today, with over 62 networks across the country and with over 1,000 small business development centers across the country. We ranked number 8, number 5 on all of our 4 key deliverable goals that SBA goals us for in the country. So we're one of the highest performing networks in the country, and we hope to plan to keep it that way. So just a few of those highlights. This last year, we helped over 700 clients achieve over 233 million in new capital acquisition. We helped 690 businesses start over the past year. And a few other key issues here, as Russ had mentioned, we are very proud of the fact that we have taken extra effort to reach some of our minority and underserved populations. And this past year, we helped over 209 minority businesses start and 373 women business owners start, which is more than half of the total new business starts that we had. So we are going to be announcing and launching some new programs over this coming year to further that activity. I also want to announce that we have 2 new key leadership team members here that have joined us over the last month. Larry March. Larry joined us as our new Associate State Director of Finance and manages all the grant programs and has the fiscal oversight and compliance with all of our federal and state grants. So welcome, Larry. We look forward to many of the great things that you'll do to help our program move forward. And Sarah Mayu joined us from the Temple SBDC and the Delaware lead office as our new Associate State Director of Program and Policy. And if you were in the room, you'd see a lot of young faces. We have a lot of our graduate students here with us today, and many of them have moved into management and leadership positions in our program, and we hope to maintain that and keep that moving as well. So I promised a couple of the clients that were filling out our annual Executive Pulse survey that I would share a few of the highlights from that survey. The survey was launched February 23rd, one day before the Ukraine invasion and the conflict with Russia. The bar charts are broken down between our clients that were in business and those that were at a pre-venture stage when they first started working with us. So as one might expect, the survey was open for about 4 weeks, closed yesterday, but overall, the perspective was very realistic about what the future 12 months of the economy overall may look like. But that's just part of the story, because when we asked them, well, let me hit this question next. Is your business still active today? Were those clients that were in business when they started with us, less than 5% dropped out or no longer in business, which is a trend we continue to see. And it's tells part of our story that we help so many businesses survive these disruptions, whether it's in the economy or in their own unique business situations. The fact that
entrepreneurs are willing to go out and seek that external advice, as Russ was highlighting, even in the digital space, is so critical for our clients. The pre-venture clients, of course, many of them were still at the stage of thinking about launching, and that's why that number is a little lower. When it comes to our clients and their perspective of their own firms, they're much more optimistic, okay? Over 47% of our businesses that were in business expect to need additional capital this next year. And more than 60% of our in-business clients are very positive and optimistic about their own business sales revenues in terms of what they expect from their own performance. Profitability, we see the same trend, where 50% of our clients are expecting profitability improvements this coming year. And in terms of paid workers, we have 40% of our in-business clients do expect to add additional workers and employees over this next year. So again, that's part of our story. If you take away a couple themes, it's while people are small business clients of the SBDC are very realistic and sober about the overall U.S. economy and global impacts impacting those economic factors. They're very optimistic about their own businesses, and we see that year in and year out, regardless of what our small business entrepreneurs face. They're just, preaching to the choir here, but it's that optimism, that ability to plow through difficult, challenging times that really separates the entrepreneurial spirit. And so we appreciate all of our entrepreneurs, our small businesses that help make that happen. So that I'm going to conclude my comments there, because we have a couple additional speakers. Our professional, we wanted to highlight some of our professional advisors today to give you and share some global impacts and scenarios that may be helpful to you. So I think we'll take those in the room here first. Chris, would you like to kick off? Chris Walk is our Associate State Director of Information Technology and Cybersecurity. And then we'll go to Kara, and then we'll bring Marty on from Zoom.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So just a few comments. So I'll keep my comments brief regarding cybersecurity. With the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there was obviously a lot of attention and concern around cyber warfare and information warfare, misinformation campaigns. And while that has not quite materialized yet, that's a concern amongst Pennsylvania small businesses. So the question is, what can they do right now, and what might we look forward to if hostilities escalate and aggression is aimed at the United States or NATO partners? So the good news right at this moment is the threat landscape really hasn't changed that much. The same things that small business owners were facing 4 weeks ago, they're facing today, and that is a relentless effort on from bots to probe and find vulnerable systems. So what do? We do now what we should have been doing last month, last year, the last decade, is patching, keeping all of our critical systems up to date. That includes our phones, our routers, our servers, our laptops, our software. Okay, so that goes without saying. Backups, backup. There's nothing that allows me to sleep better at night knowing that my systems, that my clients' systems are backed up in the event of something, whether it's natural disaster, human error, or a malicious actor, that I can recover. Okay, so that's number two. Number three, two-factor authentication, right? We can't rely on passwords alone. We need additional help. Databases will be compromised. Mistakes will be made. Two-factor authentication is a nice sort of safety net for us. And then finally, on the issue of passwords, use a password manager. Following good password protocol, they need to be long, they need to be complex, they should be unique. You shouldn't be putting them on sticky notes. Is very difficult for us just to do ourselves. Password managers help us accomplish that goal. Okay, so those four things will take Pennsylvania small businesses a long way towards protecting themselves. That being said, if hostilities escalate, the most likely way that Pennsylvania small businesses are going to feel that, I believe, is through service disruptions, right? It's unlikely that any one of our clients is going to be attacked. There's not a lot of return on investment for something like that, right? So we're looking at big infrastructure, right? We're looking at communications networks, phone networks, voice networks, SMS networks. We're looking at payment networks, Visa, MasterCard, banking, finance, right? Those are rich targets. And then infrastructure. We're talking about Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google, right? All of that stuff underneath the hood that many of us don't know about, but our everyday lives are deeply dependent on those things. So individually, we can't do much to protect that. That's the responsibility of those Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies to hopefully protect us and honor their service level agreements. But what we can do is prepare for that. Most service providers have a website where you can track the status, right? Status.quickbooks.com will let you know when QuickBooks is experiencing an outage. Because it's going to be stressful, right? Your business is going to be impacted. It's going to be disrupted. And understanding where that disruption is can be the first step in understanding what do I do next. Okay, so find out who your most important service providers are and how can I get updates. That might also take the form of following them on Twitter and subscribing to notifications so you know really early on when there is a service outage. So that's one piece. The second piece is around when you can, redundancy, resiliency. Okay, maybe you have your main e-commerce site, and in the event that that platform gets disrupted, you have a single page on another platform that you can at least direct customers to. Let them know, like, I haven't closed, right? We're having an outage. Okay, so really what we're talking about here is managing expectations. We might not be able to prevent these things happening, but we can communicate with our customers and we can manage expectations. So that last piece there is really around communication. Communicate with your customers so long as they know that, hey, there's a supply chain issue or there's a delivery issue. We're expecting, we got your order, but it's going to be 3 or 5 days. That's going to go a long way to preserving your reputation, that the customer at least knows what's going on. Okay, so those are just little quick tips there. I'm going to turn things over now to Kara. Kara Riccioni is our ag consultant. She's going to talk a little bit about the current impacts on the geopolitical situation and agriculture. Kara?
Thanks, Chris. We'll actually hear from Marty after, so he'll probably talk a little bit more on the general impacts of the global production that we're going to feel. Lucky for us, ag is essential. We learned that in the pandemic. Actually, one huge thing that we got from this pandemic is a lot of our consumers have turned to want to buy local. They've expected maybe the increased price in buying something of quality and of local production. So now that we kind of have this global turmoil, we can almost use it slightly towards our benefit on the marketing end. We have local consumers, we have local customers. In Pennsylvania, we're very lucky. We have local processors. So that's something a lot of other industries aren't really facing. And another thing that our ag producers have, we can't control the weather. So we're used to these unknown, unforeseen issues. We can't control disease pressure. We don't know. No one thought that the spotted lanternfly was going to come to Pennsylvania, but we're all very adaptive. I'm going to keep my points short and sweet and to the point. A little bit of background, however, that'll make this make a little bit more sense. As we all know, Russia is the major global supplier of crude oil. Yesterday, it dropped under $100 a barrel. So everyone can take a slight sigh of relief. We're kind of on the right trend for us, right? They're also the #1 global supplier of fertilizer. The United States doesn't buy direct from Russia. However, if you know, global supply, if one of our major producers is kind of out of the market, there's greater competition now for what is available for purchase. This season, most Pennsylvania producers have already procured and purchased their fertilizer and their seed. So hopefully we won't see a huge impact on this planting/growing season. However, Brazil is the #1 importer of Russian fertilizer, and they are the #1 exporter of soybeans and beef. a really high producer of corn. So we're going to see a global fluctuation where maybe our Pennsylvania producers can, or American producers can start to fill that void. What does this mean for us? There's going to be greater demand for the products that we can produce stateside. There's also going to be greater demand for our inputs globally. So not only will we see an increase in our commodity prices, we're also going to see an increase in those input prices. So unfortunately, we might still be looking at percentages the same, even if our number of profitability is going up. So what can we do to increase those input costs? Work with an agronomist. You can use IPM, which is integrated pest management. This will reduce your fertilizer and pesticide inputs without compromising your yield. Also, some IPM practices, such as cover crops, are covered with NRCS programs. You may have to put the cash up front, you can be reimbursed. You can reduce the number of passes over each crop. So this will eliminate your fuel costs. That's the biggest increase that we're seeing that we really can't control. You can also implement a crop rotation program. This will reduce the need for synthetic soil amendments. It will suppress your weeds, increase beneficial biologicals, and reduce pest pressure from back-to-back crops. You can also use manure. We see lots of dairy farms and beef farms in this area. Just again, be careful. We are some areas within the Chesapeake Bay watershed, or some of our farmers farm in Maryland. And I know at the moment, due to avian influenza, another thing we can't control, poultry litter is kind of on the shutdown. You can explore double cropping options. This means you're using the same field for multiple crops throughout the year. This is another chance for profitability. You can also explore different and or value added products. So instead of, if you're growing corn for grain, potentially corn for ethanol, we do have ethanol plants within Pennsylvania. So if you're on a crop, there's some options for you. Again, I encourage working with professional agronomists, CCAs. They are very lucky. They are all throughout the state. If you're on the livestock side, work with your nutritionist, monitor rations, maybe a little more closely. You'll be able to see if there's profit losses on specific areas. Look for alternate feed and forage options. Summer annuals rather than a traditional corn crop might be the key. And you can also look for options for byproduct integration. We're on the upward boom of hops, breweries, that type of industry throughout Pennsylvania. They can be key players in your nutrition program. Work with the local community. See what there are options to sell direct to consumer. So you're kind of cutting out your middleman there, right? So you're getting a greater percentage of your profit. Buy in bulk with your neighbors or peers. The farming community is great. They usually don't see each other as competition as much as camaraderie. So if you can buy in bulk, you're saving per unit and on a fuel or delivery fee. Market your products local. We have PA Preferred through PDA, which I can get you in contact with. They can help you sign up. It's a great marketing program. Look for your local restaurants that are wanting to source locally, produce, grains, meats. It's a great option. And also memberships to your farm bureaus, your livestock cooperatives, your produce cooperatives. They can also get you discounts and connections throughout the ag industry for inputs or for selling. And lastly, work with the ag professionals around you. Work with ag consultants. Work with ag marketers. Work with your local FSA, USDA offices. There are options for low interest loans. There's a lot of grant programs out there. If you're looking, we all saw the price of oil. We're looking to transition something to solar. There are solar programs out there and they can help you with all of this. I'm not an expert in those specific areas. I can get you in connection with the people that can help you. And it's a great cost savings and sustainability in the long run. So with that, I will turn it over to, well, Chris, who will turn it over to Marty, and he'll talk a little bit more about the global impact.
All right. Take it away, Martin.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Kara, as well. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll keep my remarks brief, given the hour here, and try to follow with some quality comments based on what my colleagues have said. Three things I want to cover with you. One is the scenario for business, international business in particular. Secondly, the implications for small business. Thirdly, what the SBDC should do working with clients. So on the scenario, just very briefly, this has been touched on already. Russia's war on Ukraine, we know about that. And all these are interrelated and interactive kind of factors. Consumer price index, 7.9%, 8% over the same period of time last year in February. Highest in 40 years increase. Brent crude, which Kara mentioned, today it bounced up a little bit. It's $100, just over $100 for a spot price for Brent crude. And so that affects all elements of the economy because oil is not just oil, it's gasoline. We know that. We see it at the pump. We see that truck drivers are paying $2 a gallon more than they were paying just a few months ago, rather than just us paying $1 more. All the petrochemical downstream products from detergents to plastics, that's all affected, and those prices are going up as well. Stronger dollar. So dollar is increasing both because the Fed's raising interest rates today by 0.25%. Secondly, the dollar is typically the currency of last resort, currency of crisis, currency of reserve. So people in crisis areas or concerned about the economy generally buy dollars and will sell their securities or sell their own currencies in order to buy dollars. So dollars are strong right now. We talked about labor shortages. Several of our speakers mentioned that already. We're recovering still from COVID. We know that. And supply chain, which we've heard about for a while here. And so that's affecting both domestic and overseas businesses. So that's just a general macro picture in short. So what are the implications for small business? First, fuel will affect all elements of their business, travel, transportation costs, and not just transportation costs going up, but also the uncertainty of transportation. Will we be able to get the products that we need in time for retail sale, for manufacturing, for wholesale? So there's an uncertainty as well as the rising costs, which are significant. One client I talked to the other day said, we ship a lot to China and Vietnam, and our shipping prices are more than double. I spoke to somebody who had a shipping cost container of $16,000, which several years ago, that was between $4,000 and $5,000. Sometimes the cost of shipping is now more than the cost of the product itself. Cost of inputs going up. So we know that already, but it's also meaning for our companies, there's less flexibility in reducing price for larger quantities or for a specific strategy of perhaps lowering costs to get into a certain market. So they have less flexibility because their costs are all higher. Costs of inputs are higher, and the cost of their sales, both domestically and overseas, are higher. Labor scarcity and uncertainty, and the lag of training labor when you can get the right candidates. We know that it was talked about already. Delivery uncertainty, both from suppliers and for customers. And so sometimes it's a case where shipping is late. Sometimes the cases where they're shipping shortage amounts there so they can't manufacture or meet the contracts that they typically would meet. All this means is there a performance risk that generally was assumed not to really take place once we knew the company and their reputation and ability and management and all. It wasn't really an issue, but now performance risk is an issue. So what do we as SBDC can do to help clients? One is listen. I'm a married man, so I know I need to listen, okay? And we need to listen to our clients. What are they saying? Sometimes it's just a case to listen empathetically so we hear about their problems, even if we can't really help them directly. So that's one. Secondly, we ask our clients to communicate more and better, both with their suppliers and their customers. Let them know, here are the problems I'm facing, okay? I can't help you with this, but I wanted to let you know this ahead of time so you can plan. I'm thinking about you. So at least work with your best suppliers, your most important customers, and communicate that to them. Contact your transportation companies. In a few cases, We've had clients actually buy their own trucks or transportation. Other cases, contact your shipping company or your hauler, make a contract booking, which may lower your cost because you're booking a certain amount of product in contract with one company. Consolidate shipments. This works well for international trade. Ask your client, can you buy twice as much, or can you fill up the container there, and I can give you some kind of discount there because your cost per item is less by buying a whole container of product. Inventory management is now key. Many of us remember just-in-time inventory. So we were very efficient. We had just the inventory we need. We didn't have extra costs incurred by having inventory. That's gone. Now everybody wants to have an inventory, a buffer, so that they can meet the contracts to the extent possible. Financing, cash flow, and also borrowing capacity are going to be key going forward. Can you buy more even if it's a higher cost? Do you have the bank lines available for working capital needs because you have contracts? Workers, we talked about working remotely. That's what I'm doing. I'm in Florida now. I don't even have a tie to put on to be like Ernie or Dave Patty, although I will try to get a tie as bright as Dave Patty's for our symposium in April. I promise you that. Raise prices. So I have talked to clients that said, you know, I was surprised I was able to raise prices. I've talked to my customers. I've said I had to raise prices here because my costs of input are going up. And surprisingly, they said, we understand here, you have a reputation, you've been fair with us. So, you know, if you need to raise prices, we understand that. Talked to a company in Oklahoma that did exactly that. So they're still doing well. Finally, opportunities. So from chaos, from this dislocation, from a lot of different reasons and sources, there will be new opportunities. And I think the companies that are agile, that can quote pivot, that can take advantage of the market will be better off than some companies who can't do that. So I'd encourage us working with the companies to say, look, what else can you be doing here? Can you take advantage of some dislocation here and actually increase market share and customers as well? So that concludes my remarks as quickly as I can make them. Thank you very much for listening to us today.
Well, that concludes our formal presentation for today. I want to thank our external guests, Dave Patty, Russ Starke, Solomon, who came and joined us today. I want to thank our Dean and Provost for sharing your comments and welcoming us today, and our students and staff who joined us here live, and our many listeners on YouTube and Facebook who have been there with us throughout this past 2 years. We look forward to continuing to serve you. And I want to finally thank our 3 internal SBDC consulting specialists who shared their comments and insights. So we look forward to working with all of our clients throughout the next year to enjoy the prosperity and opportunities that will present themselves. So thank you all, and talk to you soon.